Welcome back to the Padilla Family Homestead. We are here in our new kitchen at the duplex we are renting, and I am about to cook breakfast. Now, our kitchen is not fully unpacked. There's stuff all over the place. I have laundry drying right behind you, but it is still usable, and I am excited to get in the kitchen and just share with you some of the things we cook on a regular basis. Some of these things have no recipes. It's just kind of techniques and things that I do to make a meal out of something. So I'm going to flip the camera around. I'm going to move you over here and give you a shot of the stove, and I'm going to take you along with our breakfast journey. So it is almost 10 in the morning and we're getting a little hungry. We do brunch a lot of times if we're home in the mornings versus breakfast. And I close tonight, so I need to make something for dinner tonight as well. All right, so I'm gonna flip you around. Let's get this going. So for this recipe, I really did not have a plan, or I guess for this breakfast, I didn't have a recipe, but I just started going with it. It's kind of what I do in the kitchen. And so I'm going to walk you through what I am doing. So first things first, I started my cast iron on the stove. It would be about between a medium low. On our electric stove, I had it set to 4. This had a little bit of extra avocado oil in it after my husband cleaned it and then oiled it. He had put a little too much in it, so I just left that there. And I'm using that little bit of oil. The pan is, I found my electric stove, the pans smoke a little bit, so I keep the fan on during this process. That's what you just saw me turn on. I usually let my pan heat up all the way. Today I didn't, and you're gonna see, I'm gonna go ahead after I'm done chopping this onion. I'm gonna pop in a couple pieces of bacon. So my original plan was to use bacon and sausage in this to up the protein level. But we don't have a full set of cast iron anymore right now. We've got to work back up to that. And these 2 pieces of thick cut bacon really went pretty far. They were all the way throughout the dish. So I'm not cooking these until they're crispy. I'm going to cook them until they are lightly browned. So basically they're cooked, but they're softly cooked. And I'm doing this for 2 reasons. One, I want to have the bacon fat in the pan for cooking the rest of my vegetables down. And 2, when I go to chop these up and add them back into the pan, they're cooked. I can put them on my cutting board that I'm using with my other stuff, and I do not have to worry about washing it in between and so forth because I'm using raw meat. So that is something that I'm pretty anal about, is washing in between. I probably washed my hands a few times during this. It's kind of funny. I watched this YouTuber who mentioned that, how many times do you wash your hands while cooking? I wash my hands a lot during cooking, and you just don't see it because that's really boring. But I'm going to go ahead, and while that bacon's cooking, I'm going to utilize this time to start getting the rest of my vegetables ready. I am a firm believer that we eat with our eyes before we taste. And I usually like to do things with different textures when I can. Today, or different shapes and textures, I should say. I don't have my peeler. One of my favorite things to do is peel carrots into dishes. I do that with my stir fry and so forth. For this dish, I would have done that, but I can't seem to find it. So I don't know if it made the trip or not. So I just diced them up pretty small, and then I'm only using about half of a bell pepper. So I have 1 small onion, 1 carrot, half of a bell pepper, and then I'm going to do 1 turnip. I'm always starting with the vegetables that take the longest to cook. The onions I don't like really crunchy. I like them sauteed down, and soft and a little sweeter in the dish. And my carrots, I like to have be soft when I'm eating them. Same with the turnips. I find that the longer I let my bell peppers go, the sweeter that they taste in the dish, and they add a complexity of flavor. Now you can use any vegetable you want in this, whatever you like. I have done similar style dishes with beets in it, with rutabaga, radishes, whatever you really want to add into here, whatever your family eats, that's what you put in. A lot of these vegetables I will use for stir fry, a saute, or a soup. And so I have a few of each of these um, on hand a lot of the times. Some of the things I'm going to be trying to grow are the things that I eat consistently. And I have found that it doesn't take a whole lot of one thing when you are eating um, a huge variety of vegetables and flavors. And so you'll see this comes out a very full pan, and it's super flavorful. My husband and I each have a bowl, plus I have a little bit left over to bring with me for part of my dinner tonight. A lot of these, like if I were to have radishes in the garden or turnips, those are really quick turnaround items. You can easily have chopped onions in the freezer. If you don't use a whole onion, a large onion for a meal, you can chop up the rest of it, have that in the freezer, and you can just pop it out for this and put it in. So there's ways to make this meal even easier by having some things prepped as you're going. So I'm just flipping the bacon over. I'm going to cook it for a couple more minutes on the other side. I'm seeing a little bit of golden brown, not a lot, but I'm seeing a little bit of golden brown on those edges. The other thing I realized is my pan is not centered on the burner. So I was trying to get that centered using the fork so I don't burn my hand. Another big tip in the kitchen is clean up as you go. If you are going to be composting, have your compost pile. Otherwise, have your trash accessible and easy to use. So it's been a couple minutes. Obviously, this is the magic of YouTube editing. I'm going to go ahead and pull that bacon out and get it set aside so it's cooled down. And then I'm going to start putting in my onions first. I always like to do my onions first. It gives me a gauge of the temperature of the pan. It gets them started a little bit. I would love it if all my onions were a little bit caramelized, but I really like to get these going first. They don't need a whole lot of extra time over everything else because obviously the carrots are going to take time to cook down and the turnips and so forth. So I get the onions in and then I stir them up a little bit, really make sure that they're coated, that they get some of that bacon flavor and the avocado oil. I'm not putting in salt quite yet. I want to get these vegetables breaking down first. Without the help of salt. So salt will help all your vegetables release their moisture and they will soften quicker, which is great, but then you can really overcook things if you salt too early. And so for me, I like to get everything going and in here cooking a couple of minutes and making sure that I know that I'm ready for my next steps because things will start to soften a lot faster once you use salt. Which is going to be the next thing I grab because I only have a few things left to add in. This salt is one I made back in California on a video. It is an herb salt. It has like rosemary and chives and I think some fresh basil, maybe some fresh oregano, some fresh thyme. Lots of delicious fresh herbs that I had chopped up and let dry out in that salt and let the salt preserve it. And the flavor, when you smell that salt, it is so delicious smelling. And so I just add a little bit into here. I did not add that whole scoop, but I did add a little bit into here to help everything start to break down. I'm going to go ahead and take that bacon and lay it out and chop it up. I almost decided to roll it and chop it, but I wanted smaller chunks, not really strips. So I had changed my mind, decided to do the chunks. Now this is a very thick cut bacon. So if you were doing a thinner cut bacon, then I would suggest probably doing 3 pieces. I kind of like doing a piece per person, really. But this added a whole lot of bacon to the dish, which was awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that into the pan. This is going to continue adding fat to the pan as it cooks down. So it's not going to, things aren't going to dry out and burn and stick. So that's why I'm adding it back in here. Plus it'll let it cook a little bit more and it's not really going to get crispy, but it's just going to get cooked a little bit more. As this is cooking down and I'm continuing all the next steps, I am continuously stirring the pot or the pan. You don't always see it every time I do, because I do cut out some of the time in here to speed up this video for you. But I do consistently, I let it cook a little bit, stir it up, cook a little bit, stir it up. So I'm going to add this one zucchini, well, I guess Mexican squash or gray squash into the pan as well. I'm doing this into smaller chunks. That way it cooks faster and it's an easier bite. I got this squash. I have found that the Mexican markets have probably the most inexpensive squash, which is awesome right now. One thing that I wish I had for this dish, which I don't, was fresh crumbly cheese. That would have been great to add into this as well, but I didn't have any, and I don't have milk to make some, so it was really good without it though. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of this squash added in, get it stirred in. And then we are going to layer our next set of seasonings. There are some seasonings that you don't want to burn in your pan. Salt is easy enough to put in earlier, but things like pepper, you don't want to put in too early because you don't want it to burn. You also want to give enough time for your herbs to flavor your dish and to meld. But I don't want it, I didn't want to put all the herbs in at the very beginning because it would really absorb into all that oil and have a higher chance of burning as well. Before I pop my seasonings in though, I am prepping my greens. So I had washed these. These are greens that I had pulled from the garden last week, and I am using them up. It's a couple of cut and come again cabbage leaves from the outside of cabbages, some Brussels sprout leaves, and let's see, I think it's just that. I don't think I have any kale in this. So it's cabbage leaves and Brussels sprout leaves. I do really like using a variety of greens when I do a dish because it adds a complexity of flavor. Brussels sprout leaves taste like Brussels sprouts. Broccoli leaves taste like broccoli. No surprise, cabbage leaves taste like cabbage because cabbage is all leaves. Anytime you add greens in, they are going to cook down really far. And so I roll these and I'm cutting thin strips basically. I don't want crazy long strips though. So once I'm done cutting these strips down this tube, I'm going to cut down the halfway down the other way. And that way I have shorter strips, which is an easier bite. And again, like I said, you're just going to keep stirring. Things are starting to get to the point where they are breaking down. Now, I don't have any fresh garlic on hand. That's something I need to remedy. Just remember, we just moved in, so I'm still getting things settled and building our pantry and so forth. So, I am going to use, that's when I go, oh, hold it, I need garlic. I need a couple of things. So before I put these greens in, let's get this seasoning in. If you are new to my channel, I don't just have little spice jars. I buy my herbs by the pound from Azure Standard. And so I keep all my herbs in mason jars. The first one I'm going to add here is onion powder. And then I'm going to add in some garlic powder and then pepper. But I find that you can get the best deal. You can save a ton of money by buying your herbs bulk. It's a huge markup item. It saves all those little plastic containers. You're cutting out a bunch of fillers if you're buying an herb that doesn't have those fillers in it. And when you're cooking from scratch, you use so many more herbs than you would realize. The last thing I'm going to add in is just a little bit more basil. I really like basil. It's one of my favorite herbs. And so I made sure I added some more of that in. So I'm going to start mixing that in. And what this does is it kind of toasts those herbs. This is one of those things that I learned making curry, is you want to have a little bit of moisture, not a ton, a little bit of moisture in the pan. And then you also want to let your herbs have a chance to toast up. You don't want them to burn though, so you don't want to put them in too early. But that toasted herb flavor really releases the aroma into it and makes that dish, it just releases all the flavors so much more. So as I add my greens, this is only a 10.5-inch cast iron skillet. And so that's one reason I decided not to do the sausage, because it was already getting full. To the bacon really was worked all the way through it, but you can't just stir like easily because this is already full. So I just take a section at a time and I'm working those greens in, just stirring it in. I kept stirring off and on. I want to say it was about 8 minutes from that last clip to this clip. I also cleaned up my counter and work area and just really let this work itself down until it was to the texture that we wanted. And then it was going to be time to serve this up. When you are tasting something to see if it's done, taste your things that take the longest to cook. The things like carrots or the turnips, and that you're not going to want super crunchy. To serve this up, I'm just putting it into a bowl. And then I'm going to sprinkle, not sprinkle, but drizzle some plum dark balsamic vinegar. This dark balsamic vinegar I got at High Hand. It's a nursery in Northern California. They have a High Hand olive oil company. I think you can order it still online on the website. I really like theirs. There's also another balsamic place here locally. Most of the time, to find these thicker, nicer balsamics, you need to find an olive oil company, and it's usually paired with that. And then I'm just going to top it with a scoop of sauerkraut, and so that adds some of the ferment, some of the acidity, along with the savoriness. Both of those things actually help balance blood sugars and stop your blood sugars from spiking. So that's one of the reasons why I use them. And that's brunch. It is fresh. It has some bacon in it, sauerkraut, some balsamic. Both will help with my hubby's blood sugars. That's good. I really like this. You can make it with all different kinds of things. but this is good. We're going to go eat. I will see you on the next video.